On the afternoon of July 29th, 2016, 23-year-old Felix stood in the break room of the industrial manufacturing company where he worked in northwestern Germany. The break room was dimly lit, with the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, casting an almost sickly glow over the room. A faint odor of stale coffee lingered in the air, mingling with the smell of microwaved meals that often filled the space during lunch breaks. Felix, trying to push away the unease of yet another silent break with his much older colleagues, poured cereal into a bowl, his thoughts elsewhere. He was studying to become an engineer, a future that excited him, but his part-time job as a machine mechanic was just a means to an end. It wasn't easy fitting in at the company. Felix was the youngest person by far, and his colleagues, men in their 50s, seemed to regard him as an outsider, an annoyance at best. They stuck to their routines, showing no interest in conversing with a young man who was still figuring out his future. Felix didn't mind so much, but today he felt it more than usual. He grabbed his carton of lactose-free milk, something he kept in the communal fridge for his own comfort, and sat down at the table with Otto and Klaus. Otto was the older of the two, and though he was more talkative than Klaus, Felix had noticed a distance between them all. As he settled in, the silence between them thickened. Otto and Klaus barely acknowledged his presence, continuing to eat their sandwiches without a word. Felix stirred his cereal, the sound of the spoon scraping against the bowl far too loud in the otherwise quiet room. He cleared his throat. "Hey, how's the day, G? How is?" Felix asked, trying to break the awkward silence. Klaus, a wiry man with a permanent scowl, glanced up, shrugged, and immediately went back to his meal. Felix felt a pang of disappointment, but Otto, typically a little more open, put down his sandwich and rubbed his temples. "Not great," he muttered, his voice heavy. "My head's killing me. Stomach's in knots. I feel like I've been hit by a truck." Felix hesitated, unsure how to respond. He simply nodded awkwardly. "Sorry to hear that, Otto," he said. But the conversation died almost instantly, leaving Felix to eat alone in the suffocating quiet of the break room. Felix quickly finished his cereal and left the break room. Little did he know, the unease he felt during that lunch break was nothing compared to what would follow. Returning to his work, Felix suddenly felt a sharp cramp twist in his stomach. The pain was intense, more so than the usual cramps he had learned to live with from his lactose intolerance. Nausea rolled over him in waves, stronger than he had ever experienced before. He clutched his stomach, gasping for air. Did I grab the wrong milk? He wondered frantically. He rushed back to the break room, praying it was just a mistake. But when he yanked open the fridge, he saw only his lactose-free carton. No regular milk. The confusion deepened, replaced by growing panic. Something was terribly wrong. Felix barely made it home before collapsing in front of the toilet, vomiting violently until his throat burned. His stomach was in knots, and it seemed like the pain would never end. He stood up slowly, wiping his mouth and splashing cold water on his face to try to calm himself. But then, a new sensation gripped him. His fingers began to tingle. At first, it was just a slight prickling sensation, but within moments, it spread up his arms. His hands felt cold and numb, as though they weren't even his own. Felix flexed his fingers desperately, trying to get the feeling back, but nothing helped. The panic set in. This wasn't lactose intolerance. Something was terribly wrong. In a daze, he called his mother, his voice shaky with fear. "Mom, my hands. I can't feel them. What's happening to me?" His mother insisted he see a doctor, which he did the following day. The doctor, after a brief exam, attributed his symptoms to stress and overwork. "It's probably nothing serious," she said, writing him a prescription for vitamins and advising rest. Felix, relieved for a moment, followed the instructions, but nothing changed. Over the next 2 weeks, the tingling in his hands worsened, and soon it spread to his arms. His legs grew weak. Felix found it increasingly difficult to walk, and every step felt like a challenge. One morning, Felix tried to get up and make his way to the bathroom, but his legs buckled beneath him. He couldn't stand. His body seemed to be betraying him, refusing to cooperate. He collapsed, crawling back to bed in exhaustion. The reality of the situation set in. This wasn't just a random illness. Felix was spiraling downward, and his health was deteriorating rapidly. Desperate, Felix called his mother once more. This time, it wasn't for advice, it was for help. She rushed him to the hospital, where he was examined by a neurologist. The doctor was concerned by Felix's symptoms and immediately began running tests. Felix's reflexes were delayed, and the tingling in his arms had spread to his entire body. The neurologist was stumped. After a few more tests, the neurologist turned to Felix with a grim expression. "Your brain is inflamed," she said, her voice low. "It could be an infection or your immune system attacking itself." Felix was stunned. His mind raced. What could possibly be causing this? The doctor ordered more tests to check for infections, but everything came back negative. Felix's body continued to decline. His face began to swell, his speech became slurred, and soon, he couldn't even swallow water without choking. Then came the metallic taste. A constant, bitter film coated his tongue, making everything he ate or drank feel wrong. He struggled to explain it to the doctor, his words garbled. Metal mouth water. It was then that the neurologist's eyes widened. "This isn't just inflammation," she whispered. "This is poisoning." But who could have poisoned him? How? And why? The specialists at the university hospital were just as confused. Felix's kidneys and liver began to fail, and he slipped deeper into unconsciousness. One doctor, refusing to give up, began scouring medical journals for rare conditions that might match Felix's symptoms. And then, after hours of searching, he found it. A disease so rare it had only been documented 3 times in the past century. The condition was acute mercury poisoning. Lethal levels of mercury had been introduced into Felix's body. The revelation was shocking. Felix wasn't sick. He was being poisoned. Police were immediately called, and they began investigating every aspect of Felix's life, his food, his water, everything he had come into contact with. But they couldn't find anything. No traces of poison in his food, no contamination in his water. Everything came up clean. Felix slipped further into a vegetative state, his body too damaged to recover. The investigation seemed to hit a dead end. But then, 2 years later, something remarkable happened. Otto, the coworker who had complained of his headache and stomach pains that day, was hospitalized with kidney failure. At the same time, another employee, Elias, began experiencing crippling stomach pains. When Elias noticed a strange powder on his sandwich, he immediately called the police. What they discovered in Klaus's basement was horrifying. It was like something out of a mad scientist's lab. Jars of mercury, lead, and cadmium lined the shelves. Klaus had been secretly poisoning his coworkers for years, experimenting with chemicals, watching them suffer, and documenting the effects. Felix's condition, which had baffled the doctors, was the result of pure mercury poisoning that Klaus had spiked into his cereal. Klaus was arrested and later confessed to the poisonings. His trial was chilling. In March 2019, Klaus was sentenced to life in prison for his crimes. But for Felix, it was too late. He had been in a vegetative state for 3 years, and just 10 months after Klaus's conviction, Felix passed away. Otto and Elias, though they survived, continued to suffer from the long-term effects of the poisoning. Their lives were forever changed by Klaus's actions. Felix's story led to a profound shift in workplace safety laws. The case raised awareness about the dangers of industrial poisoning and the importance of early detection. Felix's mother established a foundation in his name, and new toxicology screenings were introduced for workers presenting with unexplained neurological symptoms. The factory, where Felix's life had taken such a tragic turn, was eventually shut down and demolished. Its windows now boarded up. It stands as a reminder of the dangers that can lurk in the most unexpected places. To this day, Klaus's motives remain unclear. His cold, clinical notes on the effects of the poisonings provided no answers, only a chilling record of a man with no remorse. Forensic psychologists concluded that Klaus was a psychopath, a person who poisoned his coworkers simply because he could. The factory, once a place of routine, had become the backdrop for a chilling, hidden danger. Felix's case sparked changes in occupational health policies, and his mother's voice continues to call for awareness, so no one else has to suffer the way Felix did. But the haunting memory of a life stolen over a bowl of cereal lingers in the community, a reminder that sometimes the darkest threats are those we least expect.